Do you want more success, more growth, more results? Then it's time for the Boundless Success Accelerator from the Modern Observer Group. This isn't your average coaching program. It's where top performers come to dominate. Weekly group sessions, on-demand coaching, a community that's got your back, and a power-packed library of tools to supercharge your business and career. No more excuses, no more waiting. Get in, level up, and start building the life you've been dreaming about. Visit us at modernobserver.com/boundless success to join today. Let's get you to the next level.
Hello and welcome to another edition of Carnivore Bites. I'm your host, Jeff Sherman, along with Dr. Eric Lopkin for our first edition of Carnivore Bites, our podcast for 2025. 2024, Dr. Lopkin, was certainly eventful and interesting. Don't you agree?
It certainly was, and 2025 looks like it's starting off pretty eventful itself.
Should be some really good material out there. Um, Speaking of good material, but on certainly increasingly a tragic sense, is the wildfires in the LA area. All news agency basically cite zero containment, no water, basically to put the fires out from, let's just say, traditional means, fire hydrants and other such usual things that people access water from. And you can thank in part the great governor of California, Governor Newsom, who did not approve a something called the Water Restoration Act because it could kill a fish that no one really gives a shit about called the smoot. Your thoughts?
Yeah,
And another thing is also the mayor of Karen Bass is her name, is nowhere, missing in action. She's in Guyana. Beautiful. As
well,
the place increasingly looks like Mars.
yes, everybody has to be somewhere. But
There you go.
what I find amazing about this is, as horrific a story as this is, and people keep talking. Now, one of the reasons that it's so hard to contain is because there are 100-mile-an-hour winds, and
Yes.
in winds that high, they can't get launch the aircraft to dump water on it, which is how they traditionally control wildfires. However, a lot of this, while the wind is unusual, they haven't had something like this since 1993. A lot of this is actually because of California's mismanagement. First of all, they have not done proper forest fire prevention. And we know this because the federal government has been telling California this for the past 7 years. But initially it was, oh, well, Trump is saying this. It's not true. But then the Biden scientists kept saying it, and Newsom completely ignored it. So they didn't take the precautions that were necessary to avoid a tragedy like this. They did not invest in the infrastructure that they needed. This is one of the reasons there's no water coming out of the fire hydrants in these endangered neighborhoods, because it was more important to Gavin Newsom to spend money Trump proofing California than it was to actually protect the people of California. And then, on top of all of that, this was predicted. People knew this was going to happen. They didn't know when, but they knew it was going to happen several months ago. How do we know this? because the insurance companies started canceling policies in the area because they said the risk was not acceptable.
I would like again. This is it's an evolving story. It could be more than tragic. Implications. Newsom positioning himself, as Biden's best friend, but everyone knew he was positioning himself for 2028. Could this be the swan song? Could he be in the group of what we're going to get to eventually as biggest losers of the new year? He
I
always
don't
was a loser, but
he
now
was he was always a loser, but no, I don't think he's going to be in the biggest losers list. I think that will come in in 4 years because I do think he's going to try to run for president in 2028. I don't think he's going to survive even the primaries.
nope.
And
Agreed.
this is going to be yet another thing for people to run on where they say, look, this is what Gavin Newsom did to California. Do you really want him doing this to the rest of the country? And I mean, quite
I would
frank,
agree. I think it's going to. I think it's going to have implications. I think you're looking how horrific and how even going to close to stadiums, high populated areas. Obviously, again, the mayor is missing in action. This is something that's going to be a little difficult to get over, to say the least.
yeah,
Couldn't happen to a nicer guy.
the damage is incalculable.
Yes,
And
it is.
thank God, as we record this podcast, there are only two fatalities. I hope it stays that way. We don't know what's going to happen. We think a lot of people were able to be evacuated, but even the evacuation was chaotic and not planned out. Sunset Boulevard was full of cars that people had to abandon because the traffic was too great for them to get out. And then they had to use bulldozers to get rid of the cars so that emergency vehicles could get through.
Beautiful. Yep, well done as always. Mayor Newsom. Only California can produce these Mensa candidates. Schiff, Kamala, and Newsom. It's just unbelievable.
Well, this
Barbara Boxer. I mean, it's obvious how you went from a state in the '60s that was God's country to the highest exodus since Moses.
right, this is why at the end of 2024, both Allied Van Lines came out with their survey and U-Haul came out with their survey, and California topped both lists of the state that the most people are trying to leave.
And the state that has the most natural beauty. It's a state you don't want to leave. That's the really sad part, isn't it, Dr. Lopkin?
It is. You know, back in the 50s, the 60s, this was the promised land. This was
Yes.
beautiful. To this day, Apple Computer, when they release their new system softwares, they name it after the natural beauty in California. They're so proud of the state. Of course, nobody, including the tech companies, seem to be all that proud about the politicians there anymore.
Hard to do. To have another '60s throwback, you'd have to be on LSD. Just kidding. So as we transition, that might not be the right word. As we get into the new year, again, we've talked about this before, but I think it's really interesting. I think the biggest losers from the 2024-25 transition. I find it great. We had him on a loser roll like 4 years ago, or even a little longer, with the Hillary, with his 2016 Obama, Dems, and the media. Hard to get away from that. Correct?
It is, but
Obama may be the biggest.
actually no, at this point, given the events of the last 2 weeks since we did our last podcast, I have to say the biggest loser is Joe Biden. He he has essentially become this grumpy old man throwing temper tantrums about how he should have won and he could have beaten Trump again. And he is rolling out these executive orders. Now, I'm sure most of these are his people doing it because he doesn't seem to know where he is anymore.
No,
But
not at all.
essentially, what they're it looks like they're doing is they're throwing this major temper tantrum and trying to burn down the country. I know, bad analogy given our last story, but they're trying to tear down the country with these backwards policies rather than admit that, yes, they failed miserably.
Correct. Yes, and we talked about this. I think on our last podcast is the transitionary period between the lame duck president and the incoming president is usually a time where the lame duck actually increases his popularity because he can be himself. He can, I don't know, save endangered, birds on the blah blah river, whatever it is. He can talk what he really believes. I should say what he really believes. The opposite. I mean, I think he's going to be remembered as just a real ass and a loser and a failed president.
Yes,
Am I correct?
Biden spent the last 50 years crafting this image of Lunch Pail Joe, the man for the
Scranton Joe.
work, yes, Scranton Joe, the man for the working class. He was one of, and in the last 6 months, he has completely obliterated that image to the point when people look back at him as president in history, with the exception of the liberal elite, who will go, oh, look how much he accomplished. He was a
Wait. Before
complete
you go on,
failure.
I see that. I see that now. When his legislative legacy, like, what are you smoking? What are you talking about?
Yeah, see,
I mean, I
the
don't know. I don't see any accomplishment except burning, pissing through a lot of money for nothing.
well, that's the problem. That what they're counting as an accomplishment is the fact that the law got passed. They're not looking at the effect of the law. When
There
you
you
look
go.
when you look at the effects, it's been disastrous. I mean, it is absolutely amazing that, let's take the Chips Act, for example. The Chips Act took billions of taxpayer dollars to give to private industry so that they would manufacture microchips here in the United States. To this date, not a single microchip has been built here. Not a single factory has been built here. Meanwhile, Trump has not even taken office, and yesterday he announced a $20 billion private investment in building data centers here in the United States. Not a single taxpayer dollar was announced. This was private money of foreign corporations who are now investing in the US. Which is going to be more effective? I'll let you guys decide.
Yes, and I agree with that. But in some ways, speaking metaphysically, wasn't it in the end possibly? I know there was a lot of damage done in the 4 years. Could it have been the best thing for America to have that gap and let people really peer into what unbridled liberalism and progressivism really can do to a country? I say yes.
It actually was. It was very important for people to learn these lessons. And take a look. I mean, first of all, there is not a district in the country, even where Kamala Harris won, that did not shift further red in this election. Why? Because they saw what these liberal policies did. You now have Democrats. You have Eric Adams, mayor of New York. You have several New York Democratic Congress people who are saying, no, these past 4 years have been a massive failure. We need to work with the Trump administration.
Now, doesn't it also put pressure? I still say it's an endangered species. I'll use the term as I gasp Moderate Democrats. I mean, do you really want to buck what a lot of people want? I don't know if that's a really strategically a great move, like things like the border. What say you?
No, well, the moderate Democrats are the ones who are now saying, no, we have to work with Trump. And they're actually being led by Senator Fetterman, who has turned out to be the saving grace of the Democratic Party. Nobody
Isn't
would have.
that interesting? You're 100% correct. You know something? If it wasn't for him, it could be like whatever the sucking sound down the drain. He might actually come back from his stroke to be the voice of sanity.
Yes. I mean,
He's
right
as
now,
far as I know, he's the only one. I don't know anyone.
well, no, there are a couple of Democratic Congress people in New York. There are a couple of the new Democrats who were just elected who have already come out saying they're ready to work with the Trump administration. The Democratic Party right now is split into three factions. One is the moderate Democrat faction, which unfortunately seems to be the smallest faction. And
An endangered species.
these are the folks that are saying no, the last 4 years have been a disaster. It was not a communications problem, it was a policy problem. And a lot of these are newly elected Democrats who in their campaign commercials actually campaigned against the policies the Democrats have been promoting. So hopefully they'll see that these folks are the ones that can actually get things done, and that part of the party will grow. The
And
second
Nick,
part,
wait, but you have a good point too. Is that maybe that's the only salvation to the Democrats? If they go AOC squad, how do you say? Well, you can just play taps.
yeah, the second part, which of the party, which unfortunately is the largest group, is what I'm going to call the standard bearer Democrats. These are the folks that don't care about the American people, they care about the party. These are the folks like Schumer and Pelosi who they have screwed up the country royally and they're denying it till their dying day that they were wrong. They're denying they hid Biden's infirmities. They're denying that their policies were the reason they lost. They're just in a state of denial. And then you've got the third part, which is the wacko left, which fortunately is now smaller than it was before election day because a lot of these folks lost their elections. You
And
had,
wait a second, I have to ask you this. It's self-serving. AOC is her stock because we're going to talk about stocks in a second. Is her stock rising or lowering, sinking?
her stock lowered considerably when she lost her bid for the chairmanship of the committee that she was going after. She wanted to lead the Democrats in a revolt against Trump's policies. And again, of all people, Nancy Pelosi slapped her down. And I mean, I have to give credit where credit is due. Nancy Pelosi is the reason that the squad and the wacko left of the party did not gain more power over the last 4 years. She has kept them in their place. And I don't know how long she's going to be able to do that. But fortunately, we now have that first section that I mentioned who will gladly fight against these wacko left. And if you look at it, there are actually many fewer Democratic politicians that fall into this third category of the wacko left. And the bulk of this group is folks from Hollywood and actors who have lost all credibility. And in fact,
Goodbye.
just this week, I can't remember the woman's name that hosted the Golden Globes, but she said she was praising the people in the audience, saying, you're rich, you're handsome, you're good looking, you can do anything you want except convince Americans who to vote for.
No, yes, she actually was a fairly conservative. She was a fairly conservative
Yes.
host. There's definitely blowback on that. I think actually I think it's hysterical. I think Hollywood, all the Hollywood elite, you said the standard bearers of the Democrat, well, the standard bearers of the Hollywood elite, I think they're finished as well. It's pretty much over. Speaking of over, are you sad? Oh, by the way, it was funny that Schumer did say on Meet the Press that he never misled America. Okay, yep, checks in the
Yeah,
mail. But you know, you talk about Nancy Pelosi, fancy Nancy. Geez, I've always thought she was a dumbass, and I really do believe she is. But you know something? She is a stock guru. Her portfolio has far outdid the expert portfolios. She's up 54%. But I thought she was a socialist. What's going
yeah.
on here?
No, Nancy Pelosi has never been a socialist. And she's not a stupid woman. But unfortunately, what she excels at is what is best for Nancy Pelosi. She has never put what was best for America first. It was always what was best for her. She did not want to lose her power to the wackos on the left, so she kept slapping them down. She used her insider knowledge of what was going on in Congress for this amazing stock portfolio and insider trading, which if somebody in the private sector had done it, they'd be thrown in jail. But Nancy Pelosi is not stupid. She is selfish. She is egotistical. And she is out for nobody but herself. But she's not
And she has
stupid.
no shame, by the way.
Right. And
No
she
shame.
has no shame, but she's not stupid.
Well, that's up for debate. I'm just kidding. Yes, and we have Fancy Nancy. Talk about some of the biggest losers. We also have Justin, little Justy, in our could be our 51st state, along with Greenland. He's out the door, and talk about what liberalism. I hate the word progressive. Nothing progressive about it. He literally destroyed a country in less than 10 years.
Yes, the Canadian people are up in arms. They're thrilled that he is resigning, and he
God.
not only did he destroy Canada, but he also destroyed Canada's Liberal Party. Right now, Canadian polls have the Conservative Party up by 29 points in the upcoming election. That's unheard of in Canada. And it's not just Canada. The Wall Street Journal had a brilliant piece the other day talking about how these progressive liberal candidates and prime ministers are being thrown out of office across the globe. The tide has turned because people are tired of this bullshit. They are tired of struggling. They're tired of the woke policies that are not good for anyone. And what is coming out of some of these politicians is absolutely amazing. A member of the British government a few days ago came out and said that, and let's just to make sure all of our listeners know this, the United Kingdom, despite what most people think, does not have the right to freedom of speech. The government has the ability to clamp down on anything its citizens say. Well, they decided they're going to try to expand this and threatened to arrest Americans that call out the British government for their bullshit on social media and claimed they would extradite people from the US to the United Kingdom in order to prosecute them. Like
Yes,
any
smoke another joint.
right,
Smoke
like
another joint.
like
Hello.
any American court is going to allow the extradition of a United States citizen for using their God-given right of freedom of speech.
And another prediction, my friend. Great Britain, that's going to extricate itself from progressivism sooner rather than later. And we get back to Uncle Joe because it is waning physically and time wise. He's bestowed the highest honors on various people of questionable merit, especially George Soros, one of the most dangerous people in the world and certainly in America. What the hell's going on here?
Well,
And isn't Jimmy Carter the happiest dead person in the universe?
J-
I'd say
J-
yes.
Jimmy Carter lasted long enough for him to see Biden beat him out as one of the worst presidents in history. And let's face facts here. George Soros got the Medal of Freedom because he bought it. George Soros funded the Democratic Party. They talk about all of the money that the Democratic Party raised. Most of it came from George Soros and his compatriots. So that's the real reason he got the Medal of Honor. Now let's look at
Another
some.
great self hating Jew.
Yes. Now let's look at some of the folks that he got elected. London Bree, who was just kicked out as the mayor of San Francisco. Alvin Bragg, who is the
Hmm.
massively failed district attorney in New York. I'm forgetting the name of the district attorney he got elected in Los Angeles that was just kicked out of office in November. He is responsible for the defund the police movement, which people are rallying against. He is he has promoted everything that has been wrong with this country. And the Medal of Freedom is now forever tarnished because it was given to him and Hillary Clinton. Nobody has deserved an award less since Obama won the Nobel Peace Prize before he even took office.
That was the greatest. I have to agree with you on that. Yes. Again, they had the tombstone that had Jimmy Carter, 1924, 2024, and it was going to say worst president. Great guy, worst president. And they, at the last moment, they say no longer the worst president. Rest in peace, Jimmy. Excellent. Yes. So what else is gone as well? We have that. Well, before we go to what is gone, we look at the Department of Justice releasing the Smith documents and also the verdict. No breaks on the verdict in the questionable New York case. Your thoughts?
Okay, well, let's start with the New York case. There is only one reason that Judge Mershon is rushing to get the sentencing done, and that is that by law, you are not, nobody is a convicted felon. They have not been convicted until sentencing is complete. And the
100%.
Democrats desperately want to be able to say that Donald Trump was a convicted felon when he took the oath of office on January 20th. Now, and the reason that he put off doing this for so long is that the appellate court has already said, and this is a democratically leaning appellate court, they've already said there is more than enough malfeasance on Judge Mershon's part to tear this apart. So this is not going to be able to survive the appeal.
Okay, can I interject one
Yep.
thing though? You can't appeal until the sentence has been
Right. In
forthcoming. Yes.
Yes, in New York State, the law says that you cannot appeal until you are sentenced. So he wanted the sentencing to be as close as possible to the inauguration so that Trump would be a convicted felon but not have the time to get that conviction
100%
removed.
correct, doctor. Now, should Trump just say, and he reads what they're saying, suspended, and should Trump just say, well, F you, goodbye, I don't really give a shit.
Yeah, at this point, it doesn't matter for Trump. He should
But should
obviously.
he be a little, let's say, confrontational? Like, yeah, I got things to do. Get this thing over with. I
I
like that approach. What do you? I
Yeah,
like that approach.
I think he shouldn't have fought the sentencing. I think he should have just said, finally, let's get on with this. And he should have had the appeal ready to go as soon as the sentence was dropped. file the appeal. Doesn't matter if the Democrats want to call him a convicted felon on January 20th, because the American people have already shown that they know
They don't
this
give a
was a
shit.
show trial and it didn't mean anything.
And it shows desperation. Let's cut the shit. That train left the station. The felon, the Hitler. It's like, just stop digging. Stop. No, continue
Well,
digging. I'm sorry. Continue,
and
continue, continue.
and they are continuing to dig, which is why that the DOJ is going to release Jack Smith's report. The case is already gone. It's been dismissed. Nobody cares. But you'll notice the DOJ is rushing to get Jack Smith's findings out there so that they can do more name calling against Donald Trump. And yet they still have not released the recording of Joe Biden's interview with the special counsel, where it was determined that he was mentally unfit to stand
But that will
trial.
be released when Trump
I'm
gets
I'm
in office.
sure the incoming DOJ will release that.
No question about it. Again, my takeaway, I don't think anyone gives a shit. I don't give a shit. And I think the interesting part, because uh, I do sample the news to see. I believe in, people learning lessons and getting their little fingers slapped. But you look at MSNBC, CNN, a little better, not that. But they're going to, MSNBC, what are they going to do? What's in the files? What's in the releasing? What's in the doc? No. In other words, they're losing credibility. They're bleeding ratings, and they're still up to the same shit. No one
Yeah,
cares.
MSNBC has not learned their lesson. They're doubling down on their woke radical agenda. CNN is a little better. They're improving. But in the media landscape, actually, the big winner in all of this is News Nation. This was
Yes,
a tiny little news network that most people hadn't even heard of. It used to be the WGN Superstation. And they went to a news format, changed the name to News Nation, but very few people realized it was out there. They have been incredibly centrist. Even Chris Cuomo has learned his lesson and gone centrist. And they're getting better ratings because of it.
I think it's a phenomenon. How do you like that? And instead of the morons that are in charge of marketing and strategic planning, I'm sure there is no one. But anyway, at MSNBC and CNN, whoever is in charge at News Nation is getting it done. I was watching some football games, the college games, the bowl games, over a very, 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 very liberal friend. And guess what? He watches News Nation. He watches other things, but he watches News Nation. I think it's fantastic. And when Cuomo went on News Nation, it was like, oh my God, really? You kind of effed up, dude. No, I think he's on the
Yeah,
rise. I think he might be better off than he was on
I
CNN.
I
I'm dead
believe I
serious.
believe he is, and I have to say it does show just how much of what was coming out of the anchors' mouths on CNN, on MSNBC, was not necessarily from them, but coming from corporate.
100%. And I live that, meaning I do watch a News Nation, and he was unwatchable. He was a clown on CNN, that is Cuomo. And I think he's pretty good. I can watch him. Yeah, he's fine. I like him better than some people on Fox. But yeah, that's a big takeaway. Very good. Very well done. Um, and another takeaway is you talk about, we have the death of Jimmy Carter, but we also have the death of DEI, McDonald's, what two burgers. I forgot what it used to be. The Big Mac
Yes.
song. Anyway, they got rid of
Two
DEI, haven't they?
two all beef
Two
patties,
all beef.
special sauce,
Yeah, there you
lettuce,
go.
cheese, pickles, onions on a sesame seed bun. Yes,
On a
the thing has
DEI bun. There
yeah,
you go.
the thing hasn't been aired. That commercial hasn't aired in like 40 years, and it's still stuck in our heads.
Exactly. That's when marketing was marketing, and you didn't have DEI people doing the marketing. Yes. So you say that they're about to extricate themselves from this
Yeah,
plague.
they are pulling back from their DEI policies. They're the first company of 2025 to make the announcement, though there's now a long list of companies who have said, no, you know what? This is costing us money. It is not getting us any benefit, so we're not going to do it. The backlash against DEI is only growing, especially in the wake of the Supreme Court decision against colleges using affirmative action to decide who can attend their schools. Businesses are worried about the fact that if somebody sues them over not getting a job because it went to a minority who was not qualified, they will lose the case. So they are going back to meritocracies because
Yes,
this
it
way,
also has, but it also has no legs in the marketing world. 3 years ago, it was we're the I know any website of a major corporation, DI would be right up there with the innovations of the last 3 months. No longer the case, is it, Dr. Lopkin?
no, it's not. Thanks to the backlash against Bud Light, against Target, against Harley Davidson, against John Deere, companies are realizing that the people that care most about DEI are not their customers. And if you don't do what your customers want, that is where the money comes from. So, yes, people who are pushing for DEI can boycott these companies all they want. They weren't buying the products to begin with, so they're not affecting the bottom line.
Yeah, but it's also bigger than that, Dr. Eric E. Lopkin. It's about the unintended consequences of an MBA. Going to
Yeah.
these, prestigious, so-called prestigious schools. It's like, hello, genius. That's the first rule of marketing. Understand your customers. They're not sipping Chardonnay at some, five-star resort in the Hamptons. Genius. But that's another issue unto itself. But completely out of touch, I would agree. Especially companies like John Deere, Harley. There's no excuse for that crap. Uh, and you talk about power and the power of marketing and the power of people. Trump is at his highest level of power, I believe. Of course, you want to hear your comment. He talked about what's going on in the Middle East with the hostages, even though our State Department only says there may be only 20 left. He came out and said there's going to be hell to pay. He also tipped the scale in favor of Speaker Johnson. Your thoughts? Because I think there will be hell to pay. I think he's hell bent on finally getting rid, I don't mean physically, but getting rid of the albatross of the Middle East, and that is Iran.
Yes,
He's not going to be screwing around.
let's not forget that during Trump's first administration, Iran was crippled. They were crippled economically. They had no influence. They had no money. And but the only reason they're a threat now is because of the Biden administration. So
By
yes,
design.
Trump is not going to put up with this. He is going to take out Hamas if need be. He is going to minimize Iran, and he is going to put Putin in his place. Actually, a I didn't catch the details of the law, but a law passed the House today striking back at Putin's puppets in Eastern Europe. So they're already starting this. As for the Speaker of the House, that's actually not an indication of Trump's power. Because when you dig into this, people said, well, Trump made calls, Trump made calls. It wasn't Trump who was behind all of this. It was his new chief of staff, Susie Wiles.
Right.
Susie Wiles is going to come out of this as a power to be reckoned with. She is right now the most powerful woman in the world, and you are going to see what she is capable of.
Fantastic. A lot different than Lance Priebus. I would just going on a limb, Dr. Lopkin. I want to leave our listeners and you with a humorous little tidbit in the news. Doesn't really amount to much in the big scheme of things. But George Stephanopoulos, I believe, in my humble opinion, a political hack and a scumbag overall, the bimbo eruptions, all that crap. We have Jonathan Carl is now gunning for his job. Hopefully, please just take it over. I have no idea how he's lasted this long after the $15 million lawsuit. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, he's lasted this long because Disney still has not learned their lesson. The ABC News personnel were up in arms about that $15 million settlement because they're claiming that it clamps down on their ability to do their job and their freedom of speech.
Yeah.
No, what
Okay.
it clamps down on is their ability to spread misinformation and to push their liberal agenda, which is what it was designed to do. They're not reporters at ABC News anymore. And this absolutely kills me to say because David Muir, the anchor of ABC World News Tonight, went
Political hack.
yeah, went to my alma mater, Ithaca College. I know the courses he had to take because we took the same courses. He took them a number of years after I graduated. But I know what he was taught, and the stuff that's going on at ABC was not it.
Well, your fellow alum did a heck of a job in the debates. I mean,
Oh,
there
yeah.
was no bias there. Geez, that was straight up the middle. But yes, Georgie Steph, him and my girlfriend at CBS, Nora O'Donnell,
No,
two little entitled, spoiled brats, and the door can't hit both of them on the ass fast enough, Dr. Lopkin. But it's good to be back, Dr. Lopkin.
it is.
And we have a big 2025 ahead of us, and our listeners can contribute to the show, can't they?
Yes, they can. Let's hear what you have to say. What do you think about what's going on in current events and the topics we're covering? And what topics do you want to hear more about? You can go to xvadio.com/connect. Send us a message. You can also message us at the Carnivore Radio Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you. And of course, you can listen to every episode at xvadio.com, the Carnivore Radio website, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Audible, Amazon Music. And now you can catch us on more social media now that Facebook and Meta have turned the page and aren't going to be censoring anymore. So let's listen to the podcasts wherever you find it on all of these platforms that respect freedom of speech.
Thank you, Dr. Locken. I'm looking very much forward to a great 2025.
We'll see you next week.